folks who are the town historians. I want you to imagine without any of the buildings, if you can close your eyes and think of ever being towards the Delaware Water Gap, where you see all of these grassy fields and then you see streams and little rivers and then some hills. That's what this area looked like about 150 years ago. There were a few farmhouses. This was the property of the Cranes. The Cajano Funeral Home was the house of Anna Crane, and then the daughter, I think, of Israel Crane, or Azariah. And then the Crane house was near where the Pathmark is. And then it was moved over to Orange Road, where it is now in the Montclair Historical Society. But this was all grassy fields and plots of farmland, and then you could see the mountain in the distance, and there was Tony's Brook, which is flowing through, and then this train line was set out around the 1860s, I believe. I beg your pardon? 1857. So that was it. So that's what more or less built when the Italians arrived. And then the Italians came here. Tommy will be able to tell you more about it. When Montclair was building the water system and the sewer lines, two towns from Italy, Licosa and Lacedonia, were basically the men and women were just sent here because there was too much saturation of work going on. Well, Brooklyn was already passed, and then Newark was all saturated. That's where my family was from the First Ward. And then there was work here in the 1890s, and that was to do the sewer systems. So that's how this community developed.
Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you my perspective of this particular area from my childhood. I'm 66 years old. But how do I look? My wife is 66, or am I getting old?
No, looking good.
Yeah, you look great, God bless.
Well, anyway, what I'm going to give you is, like I said, from my perspective, from my childhood in this area, and just to give you an idea, like I said, I'm 66 years old. Now, when we were kids down here, in fact, like I said, I didn't know Louise was going to be here, but what is it, 1, 2, 3, the fourth or the fifth house was your house, right? Which one, the fourth?
1, 2, 3, 4, the sixth house.
Sixth house. With Louise's house up there. I remember that. I knew it was up here, but I wasn't sure which one it was. But anyway, this whole area here, was a lumber yard prior to becoming the Acme, and then CVS and the Blockbuster taking over. But there was a lumber yard here, and it was all fenced in. And as youngsters, and I'll go back to as young as 9 and 10 years old, once in a while we used to create a little mischief. We used to get into the lumber yard, and whatever mischief we could create there, we'd create some mischief in the lumber yard. So right there, like I said, is from my recollection, from my childhood, I remember from being a lumber yard there. Over here, this was a gas station. It was Joe Misha's gas station. The Mishas are a very prominent family in Montclair, and Joe Misha ran this gas station for many, many, many years. And a lot of people patronize this particular station here. Now, let's start going this way.
Good.
Okay, if Louise remembers this trail has always been here. About where the electrical stanchion is, there used to be a wooden house there. It was the old railroad house, and it used to be manned by Mr. Caputo. Mr. Caputo used to be known by Master Jeech. Everybody in Sicilian, they got these odd nicknames, but Mr. Caputo was Master Jeech. And Master Jeech used to have some kind of a connection where they'd let him know that the trains were coming, and he would come here to this location, and he would lower these stanchions for the railroad by hand. And then he would do the same at Pine and Claremont Avenue. And when the train went by, Master Jeech would then roll him back up and go back to his little house and smoke a cigar and drink coffee, whatever he did all day. It'd be the old ice house. They used to have, tremendous I remember tremendous blocks of ice, and they used to, with these black two-handled picks, used to grab the ice and drag it along and throw it on the trucks.
My mother still has that.
Is that right? Because back, like I said, even during my time, almost everyone in the area had refrigerators, but you had to cool them by using ice to cool the refrigerators. Yeah. So I'm talking to you and I'm saying, geez, I'm really old. Yeah.
A lot of the houses before there was electric refrigerators that were patented by Edison, who lived nearby in West Orange. Before that, there were most of the larger residences had trap doors on the outside so that the iceman could come and deliver the ice without disturbing the residents of the house. And that was like a room off the kitchen, which lots of people have turned into a pantry. And then there was always the butler's pantry.
Is that right? Let's go, Kirby. Carol, this used to be Brookdale Beverage Company, soda. Brookdale Beverage Soda Company. And I used to have a couple of friends. One comes to mind where Louise would know him. His name was Phil Bucino. We used to call him Phil Buck. Well, Phil Buck used to work here, and he used to deliver help deliver the soda. And he used to try to get his run done early because he used to like the racehorses, and he'd come back and get a couple of the kids from the block and go to the racetrack to bet on the racehorses, all the money he made at Brookdale. In fact, I don't know if is Phil still alive today? Yeah.
I remember.
That used to be Joe Ferrara's auto body. Joe Ferrara served in the Second World War, and when he was over in Europe, he devised. They had a lot of damage from bombs, knocking out the trucks, the tanks, and all this kind of stuff. And Joe, in his intricate mind, devised some kind of a tool to help pry loose metal and to make metal come off of different areas of the tire so they can get the machinery moving on the road again. When Joe got out of the Army, he came here and he started an auto body shop right here. He's now, Joe is I think is deceased, but his son, Matty, is now running Ferrara Auto Bodies up on Orange Road in Montclair. They're very, very prominent in the auto body field. So that was Meat Market. Now, Matty Andolino is still alive, and Matty's is famous for making sausage. In fact, Matty still makes sausage that he gives to different restaurants in the area. But this all started here 75 years ago with his father making sausage out of that shop. That was Matty Andolino's meat and grocery store.
This is also something more veil. I had the whole thing.
This particular building here, I don't remember if Louise remembers, but I remember as a very young child coming to midnight mass here at Mount Carmel. This was in 1948. I was with my mom, and we were coming to midnight mass, and the church bells were literally ringing when there was a fire that broke out in this house. And the house used to be occupied by the Papa, P-A-P-A, Papa family. As a result of that fire, 3 young Papa children, ranging in age, I think from like 5 to about 10, expired, with the father and another daughter, Suzanne, who was Louise and our age, who was friendly with us, severely burned in the fire. That was a very tragic evening. And as a result of this fire and as a result of this tragedy, a bunch of people got together and they started the Papa Fund. And as a result of creating the Papa Fund, there used to be an old theater. Everybody familiar with Montclair Police Headquarters on the corner of Valley Road and Bloomfield Avenue? Well, across the street where the Lexus and the Jaguar places, that used to be the old, before Sears, that used to be the old Montclair Theater. It was a beautiful theater, as I remember and I recall. Anyway, as a result of the Papa Fund, the Montclair Theater was rented, and we had a show there. And some of the luminaries were Vic Damone, Sarah Vaughan, was Phil Brito. There's a number of them listed in that book. They gave a show, and as a result, they raised something like $7,000 or $8,000 for the Papa family. But that was an evening that still sticks with me. I remember the fire trucks here. I remember the ambulance. I remember bringing these people out. It was really a tragic evening. It was a hell of a way to spend Christmas Eve.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
Sarah Vaughan's family was from Orange, and she lived on and off in the Darden house. Dr. Darden was an African-American doctor who was the doctor of the musicians of the Cotton Club. And their house is on Valley Road. And Sarah Vaughan is buried in Rosedale Cemetery.
Okay. They were all occupied by immigrant Italian families. In fact, I had two uncles that lived right here at 99. One lived on the first floor, one lived on the third floor. Oh, you're living there? Right now. I just live on the fourth.
Tommy, can I say something about the contract?
Jump in anytime you want.
Yeah. On this street, you really don't see many pre-existing wooden frame, farmhouses. Instead, you see these masonry houses built more or less by Italian contractors. And so what would happen is the contractors would build the buildings. They would absorb Italian immigrants coming from Italy. Someone would get them working papers, and the contractors would provide them housing and work. So that's the way it sort of functioned in the early 1900s for the Italian immigrants. So they were guaranteed work, housing, and the possibility of getting the papers in the United States. So most of these houses, you can see they're masonry houses. The Italian contractors were taking advantage of the fact that the Italian bricklayers knew masonry. It was their expertise rather than wood construction. So that's what you see. And you see some stonework. You see mainly limestone. Well, this is limestone. And then these other decorations are terracotta. And they're sort of pinned to the masonry with metal ties.
Shops down in this area. There was a number of that was a big family. There was 3 or 4 sons and three daughters. But the mom and pop used to run the Dornos with the kids getting involved. That was a Dorno's butcher shop. And I still keep in touch with one of the boys, a butcher Dorno who's living in California. And he started a new life for himself out in California. Church of Palmer. While we're here in front of the church, I just want to give you a brief rundown of Saint Sebastian. Saint Sebastian is the patron saint of Cerami, Sicily. I say it like Ceram. How do you say it in English? Ceram. I say Ceram. Well, anyway, Saint Sebastian was a soldier in the Roman army in the 3rd century. And when Christianity began to erupt, the emperor didn't take well to Christianity, and he was killing a lot of Christians. And Saint Sebastian was trying to protect these Christians, and he would try to save them whenever and however he could. And before they were slaughtered and murdered, he would pick them up and give them refuge and safe haven. Well, anyway, the emperor found out about this, and he had his imperial guards go out and arrest Saint Sebastian. They took him back. They tied him to a tree, where they fired arrows at him. They hit him with about 9 or 10 arrows, and they left him for dead. But what they didn't realize is that Saint Sebastian was a tough guy. He was born in France. He wasn't born in Sicily. He was born in France, but he became a patron saint of Cerami, Sicily. I'm not sure just how that transpired. Do you know, Louise?
Well, he was one of the earliest martyrs. So the church, in order, I don't want to deprecate the church, but in order to bring, like they were evangelizing. So they would bring these patron saints to different villages, and then they
Like Santa Agatha.
right, and then they would. I don't know how he got to Cerami, but
Yeah,
I
I'm
know
not
that
sure either.
Caesar was not Caesar. Cicero was near Cerami, and so in that era they brought the saints.
Okay, well anyway, let's get back to St. Sebastian. What they didn't know, he was a tough guy. and he didn't succumb to the arrows. And some woman came by, and she realized that he was still alive, and she cut him down from the tree. She took him home, and she nursed him back to health. He returned to health, and he continued to help the Christians against the emperor, saving them from the emperor. Well, the emperor found out again, and he had him arrested again. This time he brought him back, and they beat him to death. They literally beat Saint Sebastian to death. And he, as a result, like Louise said, he became a patron saint. One of the early martyrs, became a patron saint for Cerami in Sicily. And they celebrate that every year at the same time that we celebrate it here in the United States. And that's been celebrated at this church even when there used to be an old wooden church here prior to this. And that was when they decided to build Mount Carmel around 1937. I believe that's when I was born. And it was completed around 1939. But prior to that, it used to be the wooden church. And Saint Sebastian, we'll see him when we go into church. It's still displayed on the right-hand side of the church. And they used to have a service for Saint Sebastian. And then Saint Sebastian would be brought out the front door of the church, carried down the steps, and he'd be put on what they call larvarma. Now, interesting enough, and again I keep referring to Louise, I believe, correct me Louise, that your grandfather, or your father, I thought it was your grandfather, her father was one of the original guys that built this larvarma. And it's a tremendous piece of art. It really, has anyone seen it?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece of work, right? You got to take a look at this if you get an opportunity. It's really a tremendous piece of work, and it's a beautiful piece of art. Louise's father was one of the three guys responsible for building that. Well, anyway, prior to carrying him out of the church, we'd have the guys out here with the fireworks. And when the priest would raise the host, the fireworks would go off. Tremendous. What a feeling that used to give me as a kid. The fireworks were the best. They're still, even to today, the fireworks attributed to the Saint Sebastian feast, they're great. But they used to bring the saint down here, put him on their armor, and then they used to take the saint all over this particular area, and some of the area, and we're not going to cover the entire area that they march with the saint, but some of the same area that we're going through today. So that's, and then there's the streets here. From Claremont Avenue, where we started, down to Glenridge Avenue, and for a short distance on both sides of Glenridge Avenue, and here on Sherman Street and on Grant Street, next street, they used to have a row of colored lights across the street, all the way up and down the street. And every, I don't know, as a kid, nothing better. I mean, you know, the times are gone. We just don't have them time anymore. But then the memories that I have as a kid that I'll never forget, and that was really good times, good times. So let's continue on down. See these walls here? As kids, we used to play Johnny Jumped the White Horse. Now, what Johnny Jumped, come over here, man, everybody. What Johnny Jumped the White Horse was, Frank.
I don't know about this.
We'd have an individual stand there, and then we get 4 or 5 other individuals to come like this, and then somebody behind me, and you get like 3 or 4. And then we'd get across the street, and we'd run, and we'd jump, and we'd get as far up as we could until, how many we'd get on until they caved in. That was called Johnny Jumped the White Horse.
Maybe for another time. From here, we begin to see some of the older houses, which are those wooden frame houses that were little farmhouses, houses for farmhands. Then we see our Italian immigrants' houses, and then behind we see you see in the photographs in the booklet that Donato has prepared, this area flooded quite frequently, and it was where the Italian immigrants who came here to work on the sewer systems were made to live, and it was in the flood area.
Okay, speaking of flood areas, that's a good. See this fire hydrant? Now Donnie came over here at the wrong time, because what I'm going to explain to you is illegal, especially with the fire department. But as young kids, I remember we were poor kids, and we didn't belong to any swim clubs, or weren't able to go to any lakes or go down the shore. So what we used to do, we used to steal a wrench open up the fire hydrant, and we all used to run under the fire hydrant here as kids, and until the police or fire department came down, and we all scattered and ran all over the place, and they shut the hydrant down on us. But I'm going to tell you, as a result of that, many years later, the recreation department saw fit. I guess they felt sorry for it. They came and they put some kind of a sprinkler on it, so that we could use it legally and not waste as much water. Okay, behind the fire hydrant, that used to be the Filipini ordered nuns, the nuns. We had about a dozen Filipini nuns here. That used to be their house there. They were a great group of ladies. I mean, they were very dedicated, and they were school teachers, and they used to teach us catechism, and I remember they used to run different events, and they used to have babysitting services there from people who wanted to leave their children there. They were a great group of women. He built this building here. He was a prominent electrician in the area. This area right here with the brick in with the 4 windows and the white door of the building right here. Let's walk down a little bit. That used to be Rusomano's delicatessen. There used to be a whole window there. Now it's an apartment building, but the Rusomanos ran, Mr. and Mrs. Rusomano ran a delicatessen there. One thing about Pine Street, you never go hungry. Between butcher shops, delicatessens, fish stores, which we're going to get to, you never go hungry.
Approaching Glenridge Avenue, I want you to remember that Bloomfield Avenue didn't exist until about 1810, I believe, right, George? Bloomfield Avenue didn't exist until about 1810.
Right. Well, that's true. The turnpike.
Yes, it was. What was it called? The Bloomfield.
Newark Pompton Turnpike.
Pompton Turnpike.
It began in about 1806, but I don't think it came through here until about 1810. You're right.
Right. It was built by the Crane family as a toll road, and it was a means of bringing products from the farmlands in the west down to Newark to the port, and things from the port up to be diffused in this area. So the original road was this one, which is Glenridge Avenue, and that's why you see a cluster.
Everybody get off the street there, please.
Here you'll notice a masonry front from about 1900 attached to an 18th century farmhouse, and you'll see a cluster of other buildings from the late 18th century and early 19th century along the old road, and then Tony's Brook where that hump is.
I just want to say one more thing. This building here now is probably the last Italian club left of it in this area, really.
Aquilonese.
I think these are the people from Aquilonia. They came probably late 50s. They started coming into the 60s, and it's very active. As a matter of fact, last night there's 16 people here. They're giving from Aquilonia. They're giving a concert tonight in West Caldwell, and they had a party for them here last night. They have a recreation room and everything. So
Okay.
It's still active.
Prior to the Club Aquilonese, this used to be Baquette's Butcher Shop. Mr. Baquette ran the shop, and he had a daughter that, being, I guess, in proximity to the convent, actually eventually became a Filipini nun. And not only did his daughter become a nun, but we had 3 others. We had Rodolfo's, who lived up at 99, became a nun. And we had Mary Montession, who lived in one of which building? This building here, Louise. Do you remember Mary Montession?
Yes, I think that's
it was this building.
Yeah,
She became
right.
a Filipini nun. And in the Scarano building, we had a girl by the name of Fristeri, who became a nun, but not a Filipini.
Here we can see 3 or 4 different types of houses, like archetypes, prototypes of housing. You have and it's very similar to the way it is in Italy. You have the Casa Padronale, which is the owner's house, the owner of the company, which is like the Scorano house. So it's elegant, and it shows wealth and decoration on the facade. And then here we have like a middle class housing built by a contractor with decoration on the facade, and it's a very gracious looking house, but it's divided so that there's about maybe 6 different units. And then we have more of a tenement type housing, which was for immigrants who were just coming, like a starter house, and that was usually involving 2 rooms, like a kitchen, a sleeping room, and then a bathroom in common on every floor. And then this type of house is like a merchant's house, where you have the storefront, and then you have the housing in the back. And this is a modern storefront from about 1900, pasted onto what was a recuperated wooden farmhouse.
This used to be, right in this whole area, used to be Filiacci's fish store. Mr. Filiacci used to run the fish store here. And it was it was a great place. The Italians loved their fish. And this was a good, fresh, healthy fish here that Mr. Filiacci, I can see him back there scraping the fish and putting it on the ice. This was the Filiacci fish store.
Farmhouse. Of course, it's been remanaged over time.
God bless you.
Salute.
As unusual as this may sound, it's the truth. This used to be Rosen's Jewish Bakery. Huh?
Yeah.
The best, right?
Best jelly donuts.
And the seated roll, the seated Jewish roll. This was a prominent location. Rosen's Jewish Bakery. Stop right here. All right, this used to be Joe Scroy's. It was also an ice house and a delicatessen type store at both locations. He had the corner store and the ice house here. As you can see, Scroy, they built this in 1978, this new addition. But they were an old family. In fact, his son Joey ended up owning Dunkin' Donuts on Bloomfield Avenue for many years. He's no longer the Dunkin' Donuts on Billionaire.
Actually, he owned all the Dunkin' Donuts in town. There's three of them. He owned them.
Over here, that used to be, now listen to this, you ready? Benny Shusha Chicken Market. It's called Benny Shusha. This was his chicken market right here. And Benny was a relatively newcomer to the area, because I'm going to give you another location. Nick Soda was the chicken market king, which we're going to go by when we go to Glamour. But Benny tried to cut in on his business and open up a chicken market, but he didn't do as well as Nick Soda and his chicken market on Glamour Avenue. That, when I was a kid growing up, used to be a drugstore.
Who owned that, Tommy?
I'm going to give you that. I want to get down here.
No, it's just amazing how fast it,
Okay, everybody here caught up? This used to be a drugstore. It used to be owned and operated by Doc Casabona. Doc Casabona, as a kid, I remember, was a real dapper guy. He was one of them dark-haired Italian guys with a sleek body, and he used to, one thing I remember, he always had pretty women around him. Doc Casabona used to run the drugstore here. Cajano used to be across the street, right on the corner there. That was traditionally from the family Cajano's liquor store. Now, let's go across the street here. Reminded me, which Doc Casabona was from Cerami, Sicily. He was Ceramese. I'm not going to take you up the street, but I just want to give you an idea. We're going to start on the south side of the street here. Just visualize none of that being there. Well, that Cajano liquor store was a row of houses. I remember it was the Panza family, the Maggio family, a couple other families, and then at the end of the fence there was a building there that used to be a funeral home. That was I'm trying to think what his name was. Not Cajano came many years. Bianchi. Bianchi's.
had a sign on the church.
Yeah. Bianchi's funeral home used to be right at the end of the church here. Yeah. That used to be Bianchi. He was the big honcho back in them days until Cajano got in business, and then Cajano became the big guy. But anyway, right up the street from Bianchi's was John Blondell's fuel and coal company. Now you got to visualize too. You see where the rail is, or where the wall with the fence is?
Yeah.
That was Tony, it's still Tony's Brook here, but there used to be a bridge. The bridge used to go up, and the bridge used to go over Tony's Brook, across the railroad yard. I used to roll them farmers. They used to be all railroad crop, Lackawanna Railroad. And the bridge used to go across the railroad down to Cherry Street. Cherry Street was a dead-end street of that's where I was born. And the dead end is Cherry Street. And lived there for many years, and ended up putting here down on Walby Street, which we're going to go by. Well, I found the built up there. I can remember they used to screened in porch, and they'd be in there playing cards and eating. Yeah, you know, you remember that.
My father.
But that was the
I'm
big
in the right
house.
spot.
Be a 6-family apartment building here. There was 6 families that lived here. The only family that I remember was Willie Taffer, because Willie was a Montclair police officer, and that's how I remember Willie Taffer. I know Willie used to live here. Right on the corner here used to be Olivero's grape shop. Now, this was the time of the year when they used to harvest the grapes. And the grapes used to be piled up in front of the store and in the store. And everybody would come down here and buy their grapes off the Oliveros to go home and press their homemade wine. And right next to Oliveros was Al's Happy Days. Al Happy Days was a restaurant. Al used to make the best souffle in the world. Now, souffle is the kidneys and the lungs of the cow, which today is illegal to eat. You can't even, the health department won't let you eat it. But it was one of the best dishes you ever taste. But Al was famous for making his souffle.
From Italy would give their address, because you'd have to give an address where you were going to in the United States, who was sponsoring you. And Signora Matarazzo said that the address given was 100 Glenridge Avenue. And this was travel.
Oh, it's on the manifest of Ellis Island. You know, they write, which were filled out in Italy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so people from Macedonia, from Chirame, quite a few towns, mostly from Chirame, they wrote, they would go into 100 Glenridge Avenue. And I thought the Landolfos lived there, but I was hoping somebody would
The
know.
Landolfos lived up on Glenridge Avenue. In
Yeah.
fact, their son was I think he was the first Montclair, he became a pilot. He got killed in the Second World War. He was a good football player
But
for Montclair High School.
he was a steamship agent. So I didn't know if that was like Padrone, if he brought people here to
Well,
work.
he did it for a price.
Or he was a notary.
The address was 100,
Yeah.
because those buildings are 80. So it would have been on that side, just up before Blondell, I guess, right?
Because provides services for people to be able to immigrate into the United States. So I'm sure that perhaps, you know, people would save their money the way they do today in other countries. They would save their money. They would get all of their bureaucracy taken care of for a price. They would engage somebody in the United States to sponsor them for a price, and then write letters and do all of their, you know, paperwork and correspondence, and take care of all of their business, and then eventually, when they started working, pay them off.
Street. Okay, wait, thank you. Everybody down. Right here, on the south side of Glenridge Avenue, right around the sign, was Nick Soda's chicken market. You could go in there. I remember going in there with my mother, and he'd have cages full with chickens on both sides. Now, if you were a connoisseur, some chickens are for roasting, some chickens are for frying, and some chickens are for soup. And you go in, and you tell Nick, I want a soup chicken. He'd bring it to the soup cage. You pick out your soup chicken. I can remember him getting in there and grabbing the chicken by the legs, and that chicken's flying all over. Bring the chicken over to a tray, hold his neck back, slice the neck, bleed the chicken, then put him in real hot water. They should soak them in hot water, take them out of the hot water, and put them on this rubber thing, and boom, bada boom, bouncing around, knocking all the feathers off. and you go home with a nice, fresh, killed chicken. And very quickly, one of the first times my wife came to my house on Baldwin Street, my mother had made chicken. I love chicken soup with ajinabe macaroni. I love chicken soup with ajinabe. Anyway, we were having chicken soup with ajinabe, and we got done, and my mother and I started eating the chicken feet. And my wife looked at us, and she said she thought we were cannibals. But I used to love to eat the chicken feet. I don't know anybody love to like to eat the chicken.
You know that across the street, this was a very dense neighborhood of buildings from, you know, more or less the same epoch as the ones on Pine Street, and they were demolished to make this train connection.
House in the late 70s.
Late 70s.
And this was a vacant until they just built this. But on that side, I guess Tommy, you cones?
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna give them something. Okay. Also, down from Nick Soda's Chicken Market was Albie Cohn's grocery store. Albie Cohn and Mrs. Cohn were the only two Jewish people that I know that could speak fluent Italian.
All dialects, too.
Huh?
Every dialect. Every dialect.
Yeah, they were, like I said, he could speak fluent Italian. Anyway, Mr. and Mrs. Cohen used to service mostly all the Italian people in the area, and a lot of the Italian people, when they went to shop, unfortunately didn't have enough money to pay for what they bought. Some didn't have any money at all. And Mr. Cohen would give them credit, and he would have a little book. And he'd go to his little book and he'd put Locascio 15 cents, Russo 92 cents. And everybody made sure that Mr. Cohn got paid. Mr. Cohn never got stuck from any of the Italian people, but he was very generous to the Italian community for those who were in need. He took care of them, and I think that he was a great guy.
You can see that the Russo family ate very well.
Urban, but if you look down Glenridge Avenue, when we go farther down, you'll see Victorian residences, wooden residences, and these were not included in the community, but they were just very old houses that were here because this is one of the oldest roads, prime real estate.
Okay, right where you see the tracks now, there was 3 other locations that you should be aware of. There was the old school building that was Mr. Castano, who ended up before my school building before my time, but before my time, Mr. Castano made it into a 7 or 8 family apartment, but it was an old school building that was right here. And right next to the school building was Golden Crust Bakery Shop. There was a lot of, like I said, this place was loaded with bakery shops, grocery stores, butcher shops, and right next to the Golden Crust was Curly Andolino's Social Club. Curly Andolino, back then, was a prominent Democratic leader in Montclair. I think he ended up becoming the Democratic chairman. And Curly was the guy, through his political connections, that would get a lot of these Italian guys jobs here and there. That was Curly Andolino's Social Club right here. Over here was Christy Damos's bakery shop. Go to a bakery shop. Chris was from Greece, who married an Italian lady, and they had good bread here. For a brief time, I don't know if you can remember this. This was, for a brief time, this was Tingaling's hot dog. Tingaling from Newark, famous hot dog king of Newark, was in Montclair for a brief time. He used to operate a hot dog shop here.
Also, I think from 61 to 68, Nicolo.
Yeah.
Nick Zucchino was here with the pizzeria sandwich shop.
Now, right here, across the street, was Bay Street. On this corner of Bay Street, there was an apartment building, and I remember the family that lived there. Their name was DiGeronimo's, that used to live in that apartment building. Now, on the going up, if Bay Street was still here, going up Bay Street, which would be the west side, there was another butcher shop. This guy was the Sausage King, Mr. Antilli. Mr. Antilli made the best sausage in the world. He was the Sausage King. Would you say so, Luis? Better than anybody, I think. He had the best sausage around. Right next to Mr. Antilli's was the railroad, the gates to go into the Lackawanna Railroad Yard. Across the street, there was another lumber yard where all them trees are there. There was a lumber yard there. Down from the lumber yard, there was a driveway for the U.S. Postal Service, because I'm going to show you, used to have a post office there, and the Postal Service used to park their trucks back where them apartment buildings are there, which we're going to go that far and then work our way back.
On this road, this went to Bloomfield Avenue. Pine Street didn't. Pine Street had a bridge going across it, and it picked up on the other side. But here there was a bridge that went across Bay Street. The train originally used to go to where the path mark is. So that train used to go across there. And there was a lumber yard, and I guess Blondell's was over there.
Well, telling you about Mr. Camargo, the stonemason. Well, he built a beautiful home there, and he had a beautiful basement area, all done in pine. I don't know if I'm going to see how good Louise is. Yeah, but let me tell you, Louise, maybe she don't want to remember this, but we were young kids, and we used to have parties down there. And we
never went to this.
Yes, you did. and we used to. Yeah, Catherine Melillo, Janine Grosso, and we used to play spin the bottle down there.
I'm sorry I missed it, but
Over here, this was Frank and Ann Giuliano's confectionery store. They were a fixture here. They were here for 100 years. They were good people, good hard-working people, and they, it was coffee and sundries. It was no big thing, but it was a nice little stop. Newspapers, cigarettes, that kind of stuff. Now, right here was the infamous. We used to call him San Gavone. Who's Italian here? You know what? Who knows? You know what Gavone is? I don't know why Sam got. We used to call him Sam Gavone, but he used to run a pizza shop. But he had the best pizza in the world. And you come here and get a pizza for $1. You try to get a pizza for $1 today, and no matter where you go, you're not going to get a pizza today that you pay $11, $12 for that was as good as Sam used to make for $1.
Can I say the origins of the word confon?
Go ahead.
It's from Neapolitan dialect, and what it would be if we translate it is sort of like bridge and tunnel crowd. It's kafune. It means somebody that comes into the city from the boondocks with a horse-drawn carriage called fune, the funevia. It was like a trolley car of a horse and carriages with ropes, and you would say somebody was a kafune if they had sort of like a very backwards and not very educated, not very refined, sort of bad taste, very grossier.
Like a hick.
Yeah, a hick. So a kafone is a hick.
So I guess Sam was a hick then, but he made good pizza. Okay. All right, right across the street here was what was known as the Recreation Club. Basically, they used to call it the Recreation Club, but that was a place you could go and make a bet on the basketball games, the football games, the horse racing. You can make a bet on anything you want there in the Recreation Club. Over here, this used to be Mr. Fortunato's apartment building. At this location was an apartment building. It was owned by Mr. Fortunato. Mr. Fortunato's son was the infamous Butch Fortunato, the coach, Clary Anderson of Butch Fortunato, Montclair High School. This was his dad and his mom. Had a butcher shop. Another good sausage maker. But it wasn't as good as Antilles, but it was another good sausage maker. That's Mr. Fortunato's butcher shop right here in apartment Clary Anderson. Oh, we're lucky, everybody. I want everybody to meet. This is my mom. She still lives down here. See? 91 years old.
God bless her.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Well, I have to feed.
Can they come up and you got enough for?
did. I'm moving on the first floor because I can't.
Well, let me, here, hold on. Has your son been doing all right?
Compliments. Compliments for a wonderful son.
This is so now who else do I know?
I don't know. You don't know, no, I think Louise is the only one. Here, talk Frank, talk Italian to her real quick.
Io sono stato in Italia per 24 anni e la mia prima lingua è diventata italiano. Io sono stato per 10 anni a Napoli e 2 anni a Palermo.
Io volevo andare alle dame, scusate da me, ma me ne c'avevi i parenti, zii, cugini,
Ma sarebbe carino.
ma niente più.
Ah no?
90 anni, 90 years old. God bless you.
Thank you.
All right, listen.
I know her father's so good.
Now listen, I gotta be rude. Don't get hit going across the street, but we gotta keep going.
Down on Bluefield Avenue years ago. I got hit by a car. The whole gang was there, even Mr. Reedy. And they all met me at Mount
Or
Sinai
so was the
Hospital.
police chief. I gotta be there.
And I was so embarrassed.
Okay, come on.
God
Be
bless
careful,
you,
all right?
senor.
All right.
I'm so happy to see everybody. Okay.
We'll start here. This used to be Alessandro's bakery. As a young kid, I used to get up 4 o'clock in the morning because I lived after I was born on Cherry Street. When my father died, we came here and we lived on Baldwin Street here. The house right, I'm not going to go up there for it. The house right after this farming building, and I lived there for many years until I got married. But I used to work with Alessandro Baker. I used to deliver bread with him. I used to get up 4 o'clock in the morning, come down here, we'd load the truck, and we'd go out and deliver bread. And now it's Nicole's Bakery, which is. Have anybody been in there?
Yeah.
Huh?
Oh, yeah.
You kidding me? Let's just take a walk.
I know. Can we stop?
Let's just walk in and walk out.
Just one person. Even on the way.
All right, right here. This used to be the old George Washington School. That's where you went to school, right?
No,
No, you
I
didn't.
went to Grove Street. That's why
Yeah, we have money. We always have money. We would afford. This used to be the old Grove Street School. We used to go through, well, kindergarten used to start from Minnie A. Lucy house. I'll give you a quick rundown of Minnie A. Lucy. And then first grade we start here. I went first to 6th grade here, and then went to Glenfield School. Up the street was the Minnie A. Lucy, which was the kindergarten. Minnie A. Lucy was a social worker that came to this town that did a lot of wonderful things for the Italian people, especially the Italian females. She taught the Italian females about hygiene. She taught them about how to take care of their body. She taught them how to read and write. She taught them how to take care of children. She did a lot of good things for the Italian people, like I said, especially the Italian women. She even taught them, most of the people that came over here, they didn't know how to read and write back then, and she even taught them how to read and write. She was a great lady. So let's move on down this way. Everybody's familiar. Right here is the Montclair Glenridge border. Is everybody familiar with the lamp lights in Glenridge?
Yes.
Yeah.
You see, Montclair has the overhead. When you hit Glenridge, they have the lamp lights.
Right.
Well, in that corner building where Ann and Frank Giuliano had the store, upstairs used to live Mr. Angrocchio. Mr. Angrocchio was known as the old lamplighter. He used to go to Glenridge with his thing, and he used to light the lamps every night. He lived right here on the corner of Glenridge Avenue and Pine Street in that building where Frank and Ann's was. Louise, the Triangle Club is somewhere in there where the Triangle Club is where the We're gonna go up. This is Bay Street. We're gonna go up Bay Street to Grand. All in here. All in there.
Yeah, my father built one of the first ones.
knew where we were.
Frank, you want to say anything about the architect around this area?
Yeah, here we have, that sort of main street, the Pine Street, was more like an urban cluster, like a small community. And this was more like countryside, and the houses were wooden, and some were old houses that were recuperated. I don't really see any old houses around anymore. I guess they've removed them.
There were a lot like this.
There might be one left on
all
one.
these little guys.
Well, there might still be one left on Grant, and we're going to go through there. I'm not sure. But these used to be all little homes in here.
If you're like in Ragusa or these types of cities in Sicily, where it's like an agricultural community where people really live in the country and they work the fields, but everyone has their little house in the city that they would use on Sundays when they went to church.
Let's go down this way here.
Oh, I mean,
You make
like
photos
a
from-
tear
do you
in the
have
city.
Do you have a card where you can make photos?
One story in this area, but like Frank said, these were all little homes on both sides of the street here. And to my recollection, they were mostly all Italian families with a sprinkling of some other denominations, but basically all Italian. But the one story I have is there was a home right here, and that was John and Musty de Medici. The de Medicis were linoleum kings. They must have put, in every home that had linoleum, the de Medicis put the linoleum down, and you remember Musty de Medici and John de Medicis with the linoleum? You don't remember them? Well, anyway, they were craftsmen. They put that linoleum down, and when that linoleum was laid, you had a nice piece of work here. That was the de Medici's house right here. All right, this is my last story on this street here. Now I'm going to test Louise again. Louise, I'm going to test you. So listen. This was Sherman Street. And like I said, it was the type of homes Frank described on both sides of the street. Well, anyway, right over in this area, I had a cousin by the name of Weeble. They were from Chiram in Sicily too. They were my cousins. And my cousin's father used to donate every year to the St. Sebastian a cow. Remember? Used to donate a cow, and they have a raffle. In fact, my father won the raffle one year, and we won the cow. And they used to keep the cow here until the raffle, and then they give the cow.
I will, Betty.
And whoever won the cow would take it to the butcher shop, have it slaughtered, and they'd have meat for a while. That was one of the things that St. Sebastian did. All right, now I'm not sure. You people are adventurous or what?
A little bit of background in this area here. Where you're standing, approximately here, was where the original church was built. It was the Italian community of Montclair wanted to have a church that would meet its own specific religious needs. While of course the Mass was still said in Latin, there were many things that was still in the vernacular, were already in the vernacular. For example, at a Mass, a sermon would be given in the language of the people. And there were other devotions such as benediction and missions and other devotions that were done again in the language of the people. And the Italian people in this area wanted a place that they could have their own native language and customs continue. And so they built the small church, approximately where you're standing. It was a wooden church, and it was not yet quite complete. In September of 1907, when Father Paul Lisa, the first pastor of the parish, said the first Mass on September 8th, 1907. It was not until 1915, however, that the church was formally incorporated according to the laws of the incorporation of the state of New Jersey, as every parish now has to be. So it was probably somewhere around that time that the incorporation was deemed necessary for all the parishes. But we had been in existence, as I said, as a parish for 8 years already. And Father Di Santolo, I don't remember what his first name was the first pastor under the incorporation. It had grown the church, so they wanted to build a larger church, a more permanent structure than a wooden structure. So in 1937, the cornerstone was laid here for this church under Father Salvatore Medaglia, who was the pastor at the time. He was pastor from 1933 to 1943 when I believe he passed away. And the church was built here next to the old church, and of course the rectory as well, all in the same architectural style, which I believe is called Franciscan Gothic. The bell tower itself reminds me of the bell tower in Assisi, the Basilica of St. Francis. And even though the priests here have been diocesan priests and not Franciscan priests, it was chosen, a Franciscan Italian Gothic style was chosen for this church. And of course, eventually the rectory was torn down. The church rather was torn down. Where the rectory was, I don't remember. Now I'll take you inside the church, which was, as I said, begun in 1937 and then formally consecrated in 1939. What makes this structure Gothic are the pointed arches. That is a feature of the pointed arches. In fact, today is the feast of St. Denis. And it was in the chapel of St. Denis in Paris. Often they had an enclosed garden, and that's called an atrium. Familiar with the atrium in different architectures. I need more light in here, but the windows up at the top, that in architecture, the upper story like that of windows is called the clear story. That's spelled Clerestory. The upper windows depict mysteries of the Rosary. These particular ones are the joyful mysteries, and these the sorrowful. And then we have more toward the front that depict the glorious mysteries. St. John the Baptist and the Sacred Heart. Now we have side niches with different saints. On the left, the saint is a sister looking at a crucifix. That is Saint Rita of Asha. Saint Rita, if you look close to her, at her, you will find there is a red mark in the middle of her forehead. She's not Indian. She is an Italian saint. And according to the story, she wanted to share the passion of Jesus Christ. So Jesus, from the cross, from that crucifix that she held, or one that was suspended, I'm not sure which, spoke to her and said, if you want to, I will give you some part of my suffering. And one of the thorns on his crown of thorns came from the crown and embedded itself in the forehead.